All right, good evening. It's showtime. How is everybody doing out there in Facebook world? Hey, I'm James Breckenridge, and guess what? It's Breck Time. Breck Time Broadcast is coming to you live on Facebook and YouTube, being streamed simultaneously. And I just want to thank you for coming to episode 3. Do we have a jam-packed evening tonight to talk about one of my favorite topics that I always love to be able to talk to soldiers about, and that is money. And tonight I brought on 3 amazing guests, and I'm going to get to them in a second. But I just want to thank all those out there that are streaming in, that are tuning in. Without your support, we wouldn't be where we're at. So thank you very much. All right, real quickly, let's get into the introductions, and then we'll get into the content, because I know that's what you're here for. So first thing is, I like to go ahead around the corner. I'm going to introduce them quickly, and then I'm going to allow them to speak. So first, I like to start with my dear friend, Command Sergeant Major retired Merle Jones, president of Jones Investment Group. I'd like to introduce Sean Manuel out in Osage Beach, I believe that's where you're at. And then last but not least, Bill Lockwood. So first, I want to go ahead and start off with Merle. I'm going to give you the mic and let you do a quick introduction, and then we'll just go around the horn, okay? So take the show, Merle.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that. Bottom line is I'm a soldier for life. I retired, a long time ago, and I guess my gift is to give back. And I'm an advocate for our military, and I'm an advocate for our family. So I appreciate everything. The disclaimer you see basically says, hey, we're not going to give you any advice tonight, and this is a tape podcast, so everything is said is recorded. We're just being honest and upfront. We're just here to have a good time, share our stories, share our experience. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to continue to give back to my family.
Sorry, Merle, I threw you a quick fastball out there to you, throwing that slide up too early. So, hey, Sean, out to you, please.
Yeah, Sean Manuel. I'm the founder of Strategic Wealth here in beautiful Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. Been in the financial services industry for 21 years, predominantly in bank management, insurance, investments, and financial planning. Risk management and comprehensive planning are definitely the cornerstones of our practice and kind of a passion of mine. I've been married for 25 years to my college sweetheart, have 4 girls and a Labradoodle puppy named Clark.
Oh, that's awesome. Labradoodles. Love them. I have a golden doodle, so right in the same ballpark.
Oh, great.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Sean. I really appreciate it. All right, Bill, out to you.
Hey, thanks, James. My name is Bill Lockwood. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been working with people like your audience for about 15 years now. And I'm located here in Ellisville, Missouri. If you're not from Missouri, it's just a little bit west of St. Louis. So up not too far from the arch here. Looking forward to having a good time with you guys. And I have a little kindred spirit. My brother is a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. So the Army and the military general is pretty dear to my heart as well.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thank you. So, hey, real quick, gentlemen, I want to first off, and I know I'm going to thank you again at the end, but for those viewers that might not stay all the way till the end, I want to thank you all for coming on. What you're going to do tonight is to help educate a lot of folks, and you're doing it on your personal time. It's 7 o'clock here in the Ozarks, and you're here out there going to help us out and try to educate us a little bit to make us a little bit more smarter when it comes to financial readiness. And so with that, before we get into the heart and the soul of tonight's broadcast, I want to quickly all tell you a quick story. So there's a lot of passions that I have, and tonight's passion about financial comes from a great friend of mine, a mentor of mine since about 1996. And I saw him today in the hallway. I haven't seen him, in many months because of COVID, but somehow he was in the office today and I saw him and I said, hey, Stu, I'm referring to Stu Southpaw, retired soldier for life. He was my company commander and my S3 way back in the day in 1996, 97 timeframe in Hawaii. And I remember when I was in the S3, he sat me down and he counseled me. And he asked me about, hey, Breck, what are you doing to invest for your future? And I said, I'm not investing anything. I'm not doing anything. And he took the time to sit me down and get me started. And how I got started into my investing and how I build my portfolio to where it is today is because he told me to start with $50 a month and started putting it into a mutual fund. And then that got started. And then I opened another one. And then I opened another one. And next thing you know, I have IRAs and mutual funds and investments and stocks and all this stuff everywhere. And I'm just putting money into the accounts everywhere. And so really, I dedicate tonight's broadcast to you, Stu. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with a young staff sergeant and square me away into the initial investing. And so tonight, I want to be your Stu Southpaw. I want to be the one that's going to educate you and help you get you to a point. If nothing else, just arm you with a little bit of information so that you can do the right thing and start your investment now. Because I was 27 years old and I didn't start early enough. What I want to do is I want to capture that young lieutenant, like Lieutenant Gary, who's a big investor. I want to catch that specialist Cox who's watching. I want to catch you now when you're able to start putting $50, $100, $200 a month away for your future. And yes, we're going to talk to you and teach you how to be a millionaire tonight, kind of. So I want you to stay tuned in. But before I get into the questions, I want to do 3 quick shout outs. Lately, there's been a bunch of us, and I'm talking a bunch of us, social media folks collaborating on a lot of different platforms. And there's 2 particular platforms I want to do a quick shout out. And that's to hashtag the professional SGL Staff Sergeant Hicks out at Fort Lee, Virginia, who runs NCOPD Live, a great platform to talk, leadership and talk mentorship. And so thanks to him and his audience for tuning in. And then the next one is Command Sergeant Major Mark the Hurricane Halliburton out at Fort Leavenworth. He runs the Freestyle Every Day for Everyone Facebook page. And they're another way to get after mentorship and leader development. So I consider this platform to be all about leader development. It is not a substitution for one-on-one, face-to-face leader development, but it is a way. And in my small way, we're going to get after some leader development tonight. And then lastly, I like to give out a shout out to Sergeant Seaman and his entire crew who's standing guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. The relief team is out there watching. And you know what they're doing? They're using this broadcast as their weekly NCOPD. And it just gives me chills in my bones to know that this is having an impact far-reaching outside of the Ozarks. So thanks for tuning in there, folks. We love you. We're proud of what you do up there guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. So thank you very much. Okay, now it's time. Let's get into it. First question. Gentlemen, tell me, what are some of the things that young people should do when they're trying to get started in the right direction?
I'll take this. I think absolutely the ability to start early. I love this graphic from Dave Ramsey that it gives you a visual picture. I'm a visual guy. I like to be able to see things. And if you took somebody earning 12% on average, and we won't talk about what type of investments, just roll with us for a moment. And you have one guy that waits till he's 27, invests $2,000 a year from 27 to 39. And his buddy starts at 19 and goes to 26 and stops. So one of them has invested $78,000 between 27 and 65 and has $1.5 million to show for it at retirement. The guy that started at 19 and only invested $16,000, only invested until he was 26, actually has close to $2.3 million. So absolutely the value of starting early.
No, thanks for that, Sean. I appreciate that. And that's going to roll me right into something, because one of the things that I remember Stu Southpaw, and Sean, I'll ask you to answer this one again. One of the things that Stu talked to me about when he was talking about investments to me is he talked to me about this word called systematically. So can you tell us and tell the audience, which is better to save money, to invest it all at once? Like if you get your tax return and you dump it all into an IRA at once or a mutual fund, or is it better to do it systematically over time?
That's a great question. And we get that all the time. And especially in an environment right now, like we're dealing with the correction that we've been through, is people saying, listen, I have cash sitting on the sidelines. Should I go ahead and dump it in now? The difficulty is, unless we have a crystal ball, we don't have a way to time the market. We don't have a way to guarantee that we're not going to end up buying high and selling low. This is a great example. Again, if you took $8,000 and you invested it all at once, or you took that $8,000 and divided it over 8 months, so $1,000 a month, because every time the market took a dip, the individual purchasing in at $1,000 a month got a bargain basement discount. They got that stock on sale. They actually come out with a return of over 4%, whereas the individual who dumped it in all at once actually ended up with zero return. So you'll always have a better chance of beating the market by doing it systematically, dollar cost averaging, as opposed to trying to dump in a lump sum and guessing when that low point of the market is.
That was well said. Much better than the way Stu Southpaw explained it like 26 years ago, but well done. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Okay, so real quick, before I go into the next question, I have a great question teed up for Bill, but I want the community or the audience out there, if you have a question for any of the panel members, please type it on the comments. I'll pop it up, and one of the folks on the panel will be able to square you away with your answer. So get your questions going, and we'll try to get to as many of them live tonight that we can. Okay, so let me shift slides. And Bill, this one's for you. Now that we know some things that we should be doing, tell us some of the things that we should be avoiding.
Yeah, James, thanks. And actually that's ignore that slide. That's not what I'm talking about here. But really, Sean has a great things about, investing in time. It sounds like you did a good job of doing that, James, a little later. But the things that really, I kind of a Murphy's Law kind of guy. So really, when you're young, you want to not make a lot of mistakes, because Murphy always comes around when you're least expecting it. One of those things is, say your car breaks down or something. So if you don't have an emergency fund for that, what are you doing? You're sticking it on your credit card. Next thing you know, you're paying 20% interest, things like that. So I think, having a good emergency fund with, 3-6 months of cash in there that's accessible for you. The second thing is, I think, once again, we talked about the credit card, but just improper use of credit where you're buying your vacations with it, you're not paying it off, and just building up these things that kind of goes against and makes it so you can't do that investing that Sean was talking about earlier, and then kind of could ding your credit score. And, I don't know if people really understand how important it is, especially when you're young. Your auto insurance with a bad credit score could be 3 times as much, your homeowner's 50 times more, and your mortgage like 1.5% higher. So you really want to guard that credit score by, not getting too much debt, making your payments on time, and getting the right kind of debt.
Yeah, fantastic. That's real great advice. So really appreciate that. Thanks so much, Bill. All right, Merle, before we get into your next question that I have set up for you, and I have some slides teed up that I'm going to ask you to talk about, I want to pull up one of the questions that popped up, and I'm going to go ahead and quickly answer this question for the group. So real quick, so the question's from Jessica or Michael Jenkins. Which mutual funds do you suggest investing in? And so tonight, the audience, I want to let you know that we're not going to be discussing any particular type of mutual fund, whether it's the USA Growth and Income or something like that. We're not going to discuss those type of things because at the end of the day, that's an individual decision. What I would recommend to Jessica and probably Jenkins and Michael is that seek financial assistance from someone, right? And whether whoever you choose to do that and get the advice and do that and make your own decisions on those things. So, all right. And there's a question that's popped up, and I'm not sure if we should answer it now, but I think we can answer it now, and I think we'd be safe. It comes from Brock Landers. Should a person pull out their TSP to pay off a debt if coming up on a financial hardship? Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
So at the end of the day, there's a lot of penalties and taxes that go with pulling out prematurely. I think it's a numbers drill. I understand debt. I've seen people make rash decisions quickly. And I would encourage them to really think through the taxes or talk to somebody that really understands the math and run the numbers. It is a hard thing. There are times you should take it out. More times than not, you should not, and you should figure out how to pay the debt off. That's my opinion. Sean, what do you think?
I was going to add to that. There's some interesting things with the CARES Act and what we've been through with COVID-19. And so there's actually some provisions right now that if it is COVID-19 related, that you can withdraw up to $100,000 out of a retirement account without the 10% premature withdrawal penalty. But you do have to prove that it was COVID-19 related, either having a family member who was ill, who was quarantined, who was out of a job because of it, et cetera. And then those taxes, instead of being taxable in 1 year, are spread over 3 years. But I would reiterate what you guys both said, is it's something that you want to seek personalized, individualized advice on for your circumstances to make sure the right thing is done.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. I do have another question that I'm going to go out to the field, and I think you're going to cover it later, Merle. I think it's probably in one of your presentations, but I'm going to pop it up on the screen, and you tell me if we can answer it now or if we can answer it later. But Jacob Vaughan wants to know, what percentage of my monthly income should he be investing?
Hey, that's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, I tell people, when you invest, 10% is a great number. That should kind of be like a long-term goal, I think. But every situation is different. I don't want you starving to invest 10%. I really think that you should look at the numbers. And you're going to hear that over and over tonight, because what we find is most people don't pause and just do the math. But I would say that, with the blended retirement system, 5% is an absolute must, because it's free money with that. But, our rule of thumb is you start with 10%.
Hey, Merle, I'd like to add to that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Hey, and I absolutely agree with that. I think the 10% is a good rule of thumb. But especially if you're a young family and you got a house or something, I would rather have you spend that money to protect your family now. So you might be better off buying some term insurance or something if you're trying to choose between the two. I mean, you got to look at the overall plan, not just investing, but you have to protect yourself to get to that end goal.
No, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Bill, appreciate that. Okay, so Merle, I have a couple slides teed up for you. So let me get into it. Recently, you talked about the Army transitioned to the blended retirement system. What's your advice for young soldiers taking part in the Army's new blended retirement system?
So I'm obviously, a recipient of an older system, and I received my pension. Today, with the blended retirement system, I would tell you in many situations that it is better for those that may not stay an entire career. If you put in 5%, you get 10. There is nobody on this panel that will guarantee that your money doubles. The government will match that money. If there's any way possible, I'm going to recommend you fund that 5%. The other portion is inside the TSP, you have the Roth version, which is tax-free. I'm going to recommend you take the Roth version so you can grow your money at tax-free. We all know what's going on right now. The government is spending your money to give loans around the country. If there's any way that you think taxes aren't going up, I'd love to have that conversation. Taxes will go up. Roth portion is amazing because of the tax benefits, but you've got to do the free money. The next thing is TSP. Everybody talks about what are my returns and where should I put my money. Biggest mistake people make is, the good news is the government went from the G fund to an L fund now, where if you put your money in, it's going into the L fund. And I think that's great for young people. We used to go in the G fund where you're making 2%. I had a senior NCO in my office recently, and the problem is the greatest bull market, they had their money in a G fund. They didn't make any money. Risk mitigation is important, and I think understanding that, hey, the funds that you get available right now while you're in the military, with the thrift savings plan, are good funds. Use them to the maximum capacity. Can we do the next slide, please, James? Costs are low. You're not going to get lower costs when you talk about risk management. The key is making sure that you understand the best management, risk tool for you, and making sure that portfolio is managed appropriately. Thank you very much, James.
That's your last one, Merle.
Yeah, I think Sean can talk to this. I mean, we start talking risk and reward. I think Sean is the guy that can probably speak to that.
It's interesting, like a lot of things that we've talked about, your risk tolerance, the amount of risk that you should take in a portfolio is a very personal thing. But let me walk you through some of the important elements of it. First of all, the time horizon, the length of time that money is going to be able to work for you. The shorter the time period, the less risk you want that money exposed to. So if this is short-term money that is for a car purchase or a down payment on a house, we probably have no business investing it, or if we do, in a very, very conservative strategy. If we look forward and say, you know what, this is retirement money, we have a 30-year time horizon, we can get a lot riskier. Obviously, the lower our risk, the lower our return. The higher our risk, the higher our potential return. So we have our time horizon that we have to consider. We have to consider what our objective is. What are we trying to achieve? We have to consider what type of risk we're actually willing to take. And that's a number that is difficult for people to come up with. When we ask people as professionals, what type of risk they're willing to take, they say, well, whatever comes with 8 to 10%, or whatever that number is of the return that they want to see. One of the things that all three of our practices implement and utilize is a Nobel Prize winning algorithm for determining what our client's actual risk tolerance is, so that we can actually assign a number to it. We have people much smarter than us that have assigned numbers to the individual investments out there. And we can go back, we have to acknowledge that historical results aren't going to predict the future, but we can go back and learn from history and say, let's take a snapshot of your portfolio, or even where you think you want to go with your portfolio. And let's look back and see if 2008 repeated itself. If the financial crisis separated from 2008 repeated itself, if a great market like 2013, or we had rising inflation or rising interest rates. And so we can make that conversation make not just percentage difference, but what's the actual dollar amount of exposure inside of your portfolio before we start chasing return. So it's a balancing act, but it again is something that's very personal, that is really driven by the particulars of your circumstances.
So that's great, Sean, and I appreciate that, because that's exactly as I know it. And so real quick, if you don't mind, I'd like to just add or ask you, in a mutual fund, let's say Janus or Ryan fund, and it is a moderate level fund, that's what you're talking about, that I'm taking a moderate risk. Or if it's a Janus or Ryan fund and it's a low risk, that means there's very less risk of me losing my money. Is that basically kind of what it's about? That's exactly right. And I'll add to that what you have to be careful of, whether you're self-managing your assets or you're having someone manage them, is you should have different risk tolerances for your different buckets of money. And so, your Roth, for instance, it has the best tax benefit for growth. So it typically should be the most aggressive part of your portfolio. Your before tax dollars, whether it's an IRA, your TSP, a 401k, because you're getting an upfront immediate gratification, a tax benefit, you might have something with a little bit less risk in there, because part of your return is that tax benefit. And then we talked earlier about your short-term money having almost no risk. And so it's got to be balanced to each pot of money and what their purpose is. Okay. Yep. That makes sense to me. And that's kind of what I was kind of taught throughout my career. And so thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Okay, great. Before we do a transition, I got a couple of questions from the audience that I'm going to pop up here. The first one, as it's slowly pulling up, Matt Quick is asking, what are the benefits and disadvantages with closing out your TSP accounts after leaving the military?
Yeah, I'll be glad to help with that. Matt's a great guy, retired NCO, senior NCO. I think at the end of the day, it depends on your situation, your needs, and your desires. And it's really risk mitigation. I think Sean's going to talk about a little later about financial planning and the need to really understand what that bucket of money. TSP is a bucket of money that has an intent. So in the military, the commander intent. So what is the goal of the money? Where is it expected to go? And what are you willing to risk with that? So, at the end of the day, there's not every person has their own answer. And I think that's the key. Some people it should stay there. Some people it should go into something that they feel comfortable being managed for them. So I think that's the best answer I can come up with, James, at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sean, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I'll add to it this, and it goes along with Merle's comments, is when you arrive at the place that you have to make that decision, are you wanting to continue to self-direct? Because let's be candid, if it's in the TSP, you are self-directing. TSPs and 401ks typically have a limited number of investments for you to choose from to avoid creating confusion from too many choices. But that also creates a challenge of, are you really getting the investment management that you're really after? And so if the answer is you like self-directed, you're okay with having the maybe limited choices because it does give ease in managing it, it might make sense to keep it there. If you say, you know what, I have an overall plan, I want this managed to my risk tolerance, to my particular circumstance, the cookie cutter funds that are available within TSP, within 401ks may not necessarily be ideal. And that's where you would want to seek the advice of a professional.
All right. Awesome. Well said. Bill, anything to add, or are you good?
Yeah, I'd say I agree with them. And I think, as Merle said before, the advantage of the TSP are the costs are very low. So if you're a passive, just want to leave it there, okay with it going up and down, maybe not a bad option for you. But once again, with the other guys, if you want someone to take a look at it, look at the risk, professionally manage it with a lot more options, then that's when it makes sense to move it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And now I have another question coming in from the field. I'm going to pop it up, and I'll go ahead and read it, and then you guys can take turns or take a stab at it. It says, what should a leader or potential investor look for in a financial advisor for those not on Fort Leonard Wood or near these great mentors? Who wants to take the first stab?
I mean, bottom line is I think it's relationships and it's trust. At the end of the day, we all want to make sure that somebody is looking out for our best interest. And at the end, what we've seen time and time again is making sure you feel comfortable that somebody has your objectives paramount. I mean, Sean, what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. The important thing, and all three of us share this mentality, which is why we work so well together, is we believe that everything has got to come together. There's got to be a comprehensive plan, whether someone is engaging us for that comprehensive plan or not. We know all the elements. It also places us in a fiduciary role. The licensing that we carry places us in a higher standard of conduct. You have the ability to look up your financial professional on FINRA.org and see what their experience is, see if they've ever had any complaints, those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, having someone that has that heart of a teacher, that's willing to bring you along on the journey, so they're not just telling you what to do, and takes that comprehensive overview, looking at taxes, looking at survivorship, looking at estate planning, along with those investment objectives, is what you're looking for.
Great. Thank you. Bill, please.
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple things. You want to look for, number one, do they care? Or, Do they have what kind of reputation they have, and also what kind of knowledge they have? Because you want both. You want someone who cares, but you also need someone with knowledge, someone who's showing a continued learning type thing. Myself, I have the certified financial planner, which is 6 different courses, a 2-day long test, 30 hours of continuing education. And that's why I work with Sean and Merle, because they value that stuff too. So it's really about finding someone who's cares about you. And you get that from, a lot of times it's a good reference from somebody who you might know. They might know them, just experience. And then also just sit down and talking to them and look them in the eye. I mean, there's lots of stuff out there. And as Sean said, you can look them up on FINRA.org. And it basically can list all complaints if there's a complaint against them. And mine is 0, which is nice.
If I could jump in, the one thing we've learned over this COVID thing is technology. Are you communicating? Do they have your best interest, in mind?
Right. And the other thing I want to add, and Merle made a great point with technology, is, hey, it's great to have someone who's right down the road from you and you can drop in there when you want to. But with technology, we're all kind of right down the road. You don't necessarily need somebody who's right where you're at, or if you move to get a new advisor, because there is the Zoom and et cetera. I think I'm licensed in 26 different states right now and do business in 26 different states. And I'm sure Merle is probably at 30 and Sean's probably the same route there too. So don't think you need someone who's right, sitting at the same desk with you when they can sit at a desk with you virtually as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great advice. And I'm very sure that answered the question for Joe Knopf, who's a former drill sergeant here on Fort Leonard Wood. So thank you so much for that question. All right. So Jay Levy just asked the question, what are your thoughts on the pros and cons on signing up for the survivor's benefits when retiring? And guess what, Jay? We're going to answer your question in just a second. Now we're going to transition. We're going to transition from initial investing. That was all advice on initial investing. Now we're going to go into phase 2, and that is your military pension and your retirement. I'm not going to get into it. I'll let Merle explain it. So real quick, before we get going, Merle, recently you wrote an article, which I thoroughly enjoyed and read, which was published in Forbes magazine, about the value of military pensions and how they are creating a generation of millionaires. In that article, you talk about the Military Retirement Maximizer app, which is designed to show retirees an estimate of their pension. So before we get to that, I have a surprise for y'all. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that I can get this done right. And so please bear with me, and I hope I can knock it out of the park. And here we go.
Retired Command Sergeant Major Merle Jones here. Military Retirement Maximizer app is out. Your app for you. It lays down the pension system. Most people don't understand the cost of survivor benefits to benefits. Most people don't understand the value. This guy's value is over $3 million. Did you know your pension's worth millions? The app will give you your numbers. Download the Military Retirement Maximizer today. Understand the numbers. Do the planning with your family. If you have questions, hit the button. We have benefit specialists that understand this, will help build strategies and plans for you, customized for your family. We appreciate everything y'all have done and the sacrifice. Military Retirement Maximizer app is your app. Download it today so you are taken care of. Cool.
All right. I don't know if that motivated you or not, but that motivated me. I hope it portrayed good out for the audience out there in internet world. I heard it loud and clear, so hopefully it did. So, all right. So now we're jumping into that. Merle, let's talk about it. I want you to show me how the app works and how we can gain a better understanding of what our military pension is worth.
Thank you, James. Bottom line is what I have found is we're really good at doing our jobs. We are great warriors. This audience, those that have served 20-ish years have been at war about their entire time they've served. And what we have found is most people have not put a value on the pension. And as financial planners, we sit and we start talking about what is the value of our pension? So, this illustration I did, high 3, E8, 21 years. He's got 3 years in grade. He's retiring in July. 39-year-old, which is pretty normal after 20 years. Most people come in and out of high school. All of a sudden, VA disability. You're at 10%, and your pension is worth, $1.6 million. In my generation, that was normal. I will tell you, in this generation, that is not the case. Right now, we have seen most people leaving the military at very high disability ratings because they've been deployed. Most of them are getting very high disability ratings. So instead of being 1.6, it's 3.5. And most people don't understand how that works. So what we've designed is the app, but then it's how do you educate the family? James, most people don't understand that the family is entitled to a portion of the retirement. So we're gonna, put in, and these are close estimates, these are not exact numbers, but imagine, the retirement is worth millions of dollars. This master sergeant's going to retire. He's going to pay the government, 6.5% of his pension. VA disability does not count. That is not insured. The government only protects the service member. When the service member passes, so does the retirement. So with the survivor benefits, you can give them $162, which is 6.5%. And the benefit is 55%. And that sounds great. But that is a taxable income on 1482. So you're going to get taxed on that ordinary income. The service member, while they're breathing, is going to be generating $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year. The concern is does that really take care of the family needs? There's veterans group life insurance. We'll go into that here in a minute. But when you look at the cost, I think most people have never sat down and said, holy mackerel, I have generated wealth. And, our goal is for the app is for people to understand the true value of their pension. So James, I'm seeing the slide up here. Are you hearing me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had my mic muted. I'm sorry. Real quick, I just pulled up a slide for you. I want you to talk through it. What are your thoughts about whether someone should retire and take the SBP or retire and look into civilian life insurance policy?
So I would tell you that there's not an exact science to this. I've been doing this professionally for over 19 years. As a financial advisor, I genuinely think that the SBP has its place. I think that if you look at it, probably a third of the people are uninsurable or have poor health, and they should absolutely take, survivor benefits. A third of the people should not take it because they're in good health, don't have a significant other, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't mathematically make sense. Then there's a third that say, what if? I genuinely look at it and say it's a math equation. We're going to pull up, I'm going to go to the whiteboard and kind of go through this a little bit. So, James, when you ask about should I take SBP, I will tell you that we are all on a journey. And when you look at it, you get to your starting point, but you have an ending point. And there's my cross. We're all going to die. So the question is when you leave the military and you retire, what are the needs? And then we have this thing, it's called true retirement. For most Americans, that's about 65. Right now, life expectancy is about 86. When you look at why should I take survivor benefits, guaranteed income, it's going to be inflation hedged, it's pre-tax, all great things. But when you look at what is it that my journey says, because let's say, the retiree is 40, wife is 38, and you say, oh, she's a lot younger, she should absolutely take SPP. Normally I'd say yes, but some situations are survivor benefits will pay the family. The problem is if they get married prior to age 55, they take survivor benefits from you. It's canceled. It's done. We look at this and say, when I look at life and journeys, it's like what makes the most sense? And survivor benefits has its place. A lot of people understand, the 6.5% for 55%. You can also take a smaller portion. So you can also take a portion where you pay 2.5% and get a smaller piece. We believe most people worry about, hey, the money is made here. The average retiree that I see in the military gets a $30,000 to $80,000 pay raise. This is when you make money, your TSPs, 401ks, you get the opportunity to grow. Most people will tell you that's called term insurance. We look at this and say, we want families to really think this through, make sure they understand, but there's a big gap here. Many people don't think through the gap, and then, okay, what's up here? Is it a legacy? Where is it that we want our journey to go? Each one of us have a different journey. The key is survivor benefits is the same for everybody. Does it make sense? If it makes sense, well, you should take it. But you should do the math and really think this thing through.
All right, great, Merle. Thanks. And that's gonna segue real quickly into a question that I have from the field, and in reference to the SBP, and that is from Dee-Dee Davis. Do those benefits, I think she's referring to the SBP, does it roll over to kids?
If you have a special needs child, you definitely need to take it more times than not. But you can choose to elect, which portion you want. And if the kids is a lower expense, absolutely, it makes sense to take it a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Dee-Dee, I hope that answered your question. All right, the next thing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up a comment. And while that comment's being shown, because it's just a general information comment, I'm going to go to the next question that I have for Merle. And that is, Merle, tell me, what are your thoughts on VGLI and how does it compare to civilian life insurance?
So, VGLI, we have the chart, the math, please look at the premiums when you get older. I think at the end of the day, as you're you're retiring, what you want to make sure you protect is your health. We all understand the value of the VA disability, the pension. I I think that you should really absolutely lock in your health before you start working on VA disability. I don't have a friend that's retired and will tell you otherwise. I wish I would have is the key word. At the end of the day, what we want you to do is lock in the best coverage for the best price. VGLI is guaranteed issue. Do not leave the military, without insurance. If you don't have insurance, take VGLI. You can cancel VGLI at any time. Survivor benefits, you can adjust your plan between month 25 and 36. So you can tweak the plan. If you didn't build something earlier, absolutely structure something later. But, the bottom line is when you start looking at the cost, when you're 75 years old, you can't afford insurance. And that's not where you want to be.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that. And before we get into the next question, I have another question teed up for Merle, but I have a question I think either Sean or Bill can answer. And this is from a lieutenant of mine, not of mine, but she works alongside me in the command group, Lieutenant Gary. And she asked, can you talk about what a fiduciary is versus just a financial advisor? And I'll throw that out to Bill, if you want to start first, and then we'll go to John, and then Merle wants to pick up after that.
Yeah, fiduciary is just a fancy term for we must act in your best interest. It's really that's what it kind of boils down to. Not all financial advisors have to stick to that, to that actual standard. Some, but that is changing with the laws now, kind of coming into place with Reg BI, et cetera, which I won't get into. But it's getting a little better with the disclosures. But really, fiduciary is just it's a big word to say that they have to work in your best interest, not in ours. So we don't have, most advisors have what's called a suitability standard, where if that investment is suitable for you. So they could technically give you two different investments, and they can make more off of one than the other, as long as both were suitable. If it wasn't in your best interest, they could still recommend it. Fiduciary, which is what we adhere to, is, by law, by statute, we have to give you what's in your best interest no matter what. And that's the important thing. That's why you want a fiduciary.
The only thing I'll add to that, which that was spot on, is a great way to know is whether someone is licensed essentially as a broker, where the only thing that they are able to offer are commission-based products. They're held to that suitability standard that Bill spoke to. If someone is able to do actual investment management, charge a fee for assets under management or charge a fee for financial planning, they have additional licensing, and that's part of what triggers that requirement of being held to that fiduciary standard.
All right.
Yeah, I think everybody, on this, forum is, we all give, investment advice, and we really, our broker dealer really holds us accountable to that fiduciary standard to take care of our clients and really pause and take a look at it. And we recommend everybody take a look at, the advice they're getting, and really, does it make sense, and is it really in their best interest?
All right, great. Thanks. Appreciate it. So earlier, before we got into the SBP question, like I stated, there's a question on the comments from Jay Levy, and I'm going to throw it up again. And I think Merle got most of the question answered. What are the pros and cons? And so, Merle, I'm going to take a stab at this real quick. So you tell me at the end if I was right or wrong, or stop me at any time. So a couple of years ago, I wanted to know what the retirement briefings were and all the information, all that stuff. I wanted to know about it. So I went to all the briefings like I was going to retire. And I remember during the part of the briefing, one of the mandatory briefers got up there and says, okay, one of the decisions you're going to have to make is you're going to have to make the decision on the SBP. And you're only going to have that day to make the decision. If whatever decision you make, if you don't take it, then you're shit out of luck. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that word on the internet, but you're SOL, right? You're out of luck. You ain't going to be able to do it again, and this, that, and the other. And he talked about you got to do it. It's, protect your pension, this and that, whatever. So then later on, I went on and I ended up talking to Merle. I sat down with him, and me and my wife, we sat down and kind of, he kind of laid it out. He kind of did the whole dry erase board on a notebook pad in his office and kind of talked me through it. And so again, this broadcast, this panel is not going to tell you to take the SBP or not take the SBP. That's not what this is for. But if you want to know that someone who hasn't retired, what I'm thinking, let me tell you, Jay. So the SBP, you pay so much money a month for your spouse to get a portion of your retirement pay if you were to die. So I'm going to use myself as an example, knock on wood that nothing like this happens. But let's say I pay into SBP for 5 years. I'm paying religiously $200-$300 a month, whatever I decided to pay. And if I pass away after 5 years, then my wife gets a portion of my retirement for the rest of her life, as long as she doesn't remarry, or if she dies, then it stops. My kids get nothing. Now, if I paid the same amount of SBP, the $300 a month, let's say, for the 5 years, and let's say something unfortunately happened to my wife, all that money that I put into the SBP, all 5 years is gone. The money's gone. No one sees it again. But on the flip side, if you had some type of insurance policy, and I'm not an expert at any of this stuff, so my thing would be go seek, a financial advisor to help you with that. But you can take the same amount of money that you would have put into the SBP every month and have some type of policy that whether you died or both my wife and I died, my daughter would have a legacy of money to have. Not that I want any of this to happen, but the point is that if I live 10 years past and I pass away, my wife gets my insurance policy money, lump sum, whatever, and it can go into a bank, it could get invested, and my wife can spend a portion of it and she can leave the rest for my daughter. Or if something tragic happened and both me and my wife passed away after 10 years, then my daughter gets everything. And so the SBP and a life insurance policy are not created equal. You have to determine what's best for you and your family. And so I throw that out there because I think that really, from a person who hasn't retired yet, that's kind of how I see the difference between the two. And that's really getting after Jay's question. So Merle's ready to chime in and tell me what I was wrong at. Go ahead, Merle.
I'm not going to critique the whole, James, at the end of the day, survivor benefits absolutely has a place. Insurability is a big issue. I've seen a lot of people make a big mistake of retiring or getting out and not have anything. So I would tell you that I think having something for your family is first and foremost. Going through underwriting is key. The other thing is you're right. It's survivor benefits is really a piece. It's not enough. When you look at the value of the pension, it is not the end all. Even if you take survivor benefits, you should still have another policy. So when you do the math, and most people unfortunately don't, these pensions are so valuable. I don't think anybody, I think redesign the app, I think is a wake-up call. I think it's a wake-up call on the value of the pension, but it's also, should I stay in or get out? I want you to show me where you're going to go, if your staff starting at 8-10 years, where you're going to go and find another pension like this. The survivor benefits program for your family is individually needed. Do you have children? Do you have other assets? We have a checklist, and that's where the fiduciary report comes in. We're going to walk through and make sure that we understand your need. You may be self-insured. You may have inherited $1 million. So there's no, cookie cutter approach to it. The key is your pension is worth a lot. Make sure you value it and put in the proper insurances. And part of that is probably survivor benefits. What do you think about that, Bill?
Yeah, I totally agree. And the one thing I think, we talked a little bit before, that comment on the screen was dead on when we're talking about the SPP versus private insurance is you do want to start the process before you're trying to get your VA disability, because you don't want that show. If you do find something, they're kind of conflicting things. One, you want to find something to get the rate, and the other one you don't because you want cheap insurance. So that's where you definitely want to start that process before you retire and before you go for your disability, for sure.
That's awesome. And I hope I didn't come off as I was anti-SPP, because that wasn't what I was going about. It just, obviously everybody has to make their own decision. I was just trying to give it in old layman's terms about what the difference is, especially when it comes to money. So, all right, awesome. Thanks, gentlemen, for all that explanation. So we're going to roll right into, I have another question teed up for Did it again. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So, Merle, I got a couple questions teed up for Bill and Sean, but first I want to ask you a quick question, Merle. What kind of civilian life insurance do you recommend for people not electing to take VGLI?
So the one thing, I mean, we can do an hour presentation on life insurance. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of different terms. There's whole life. There's a lot. I think each family is a little unique. What we recommend is really walking through and look at life insurance is a budget item. I think the biggest mistake most people make is, how cheap can I go? There's a lot of shows out there. I need a 20-year term. Well, I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this professionally for 19 years, going in my 20th year. I have never had a 70-year-old walk in and say, I have too much life insurance. I bought it too early. It's too cheap. Take it away. Ever. Never. So I'm going to share with you that I think building out the proper proportions, you need some to take you to your high-risk areas at a higher number. And I think we're hoping you self-insure. We're hoping you listen to us and you have Roth IRAs, you have 401ks, TSPs, you have assets. Then you self-insure at a high level. And then you have something that's for later. And, in our insurances, we look at it and it's just like, we offer the new insurance policy for the military spouse. They can leverage for long-term care, critical illness, terminal illness. Our goal is to make sure it's a strategy, it's an asset. Lump sum life insurance, normally, at least what we offer, is like a jumbo Roth. It's tax-free to the estate. Your kids are going to say, spend your TSP savings that's tax deferred, or 401k savings that's tax deferred. Take the money out of there. You pay the taxes, and let that premium pay the premium for life insurance that goes to the family tax-free. It is no longer a bill. It is an asset class. Sean, what do you think about that?
No, I agree with that 100%. The idea of being able to convert taxable dollars to tax-free dollars, especially when we see, how assets pass from generation to generation, and that typically they're used in a fairly short time period. And so being able to offer those dollars as tax-free dollars is incredible.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, appreciate that. So this is going to lead me into a question for Bill. So Bill, we've talked about we're talking about retirement. A lot of us are going to have to get a second job after we retire. So can you tell me what are some of the tax implications that we're going to have with all this additional extra money?
Well, I'd say, paying taxes is a good thing. It means you're paying more money. So let's keep that in mind. It is not all bad. Okay. So, but the thing is, you're going to say you double your income. Say you get a job paying as much as you had today, and what your pension is going to be. Well, your tax rates, we have this thing called progressive tax rates in this country. So the more money you make, the higher tax rate you pay. Now you're going to do your withholdings for your pension in your company, and you're going to throw out there and say, hey, I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife, and they're going to withhold what would be a person working 1 job, not 2. So they're going to withhold at that lower tax rate. So your first year, you're going to get a nice surprise. And I'm not saying it's really nice, but you're going to get this surprise. So you're going to have this big tax bill due. And then you're on top of that, you're going to have some penalties because you didn't withhold enough taxes and pay it. So I'd say that first year is kind of a good barometer of where you're going to be for sure. But you want to talk to a tax professional and say, hey, let's figure out how much we're going to make this year, how much tax we're going to do. You're probably going to want to file some quarterly taxes to keep from getting that big, nice, not so nice surprise at the end.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate this. And now I'm over to Sean real quick. So I'm going to pull up a slide for you, Sean, because I want to talk to you real quick about credit scores. As we prepare for retirement, at what point should someone preparing for retirement, or maybe not even that, start talking to a professional financial planner?
It is, again, an incredibly personal decision, but let me walk you through what those parameters look like. And I have to give a disclaimer. I love comprehensive planning. I think that everybody should do it. So I'll give that disclaimer before I start. But let's talk about why we do it. If you think about why we're saving in the first place, right? We're saving in the first place so that at some point we can stop going to work every day and have enough money that we can retire on, and we can do what we want when we want to do it. And so if we just approach that from the investment management standpoint and say, hey, we've had some great conversations about dollar cost averaging, about risk, about time horizon, et cetera, but that's one silo. It's approaching a huge problem from one perspective. What comprehensive planning does is it allows us to approach that same problem from 4 or 5 different angles. So we're looking at tax planning, we're looking at cash flow, we're looking at debt management, education planning, insurance planning. We're fitting all those pieces together and creating efficiencies within your plan, accelerating your progress because we're approaching it from several different directions. So, I think that's incredibly important to have. But the other part of this is this: we are busy people. Americans have more going on than they ever have. Every 5 seconds, your cell phone's dinging, your watch is dinging. There are just a million different distractions every day. We have to have a way to keep score. If we want to do well, I think all of us inherently want a level of financial success. We have in our mind what we want that to look like, right? But if we're not every day keeping score, just like we have to do if we want to manage our weight or our health or anything else, taking stock of exactly where we are and the decisions we have to make in that day, we're not going to be successful. And so you have to decide, am I capable of that? With all the distractions going on, do I have a great method for keeping score? Our industry is about helping you keep score.
Are you saying failing the plan is planning to fail?
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And then if you take that and say, listen, do I need an accountability partner? Do I need a financial coach that is simply going to hold me accountable to the things that I told them was important and help accelerate that progress towards those goals? And so that's where comprehensive planning comes in. I always give people the analogy that basically they're hiring a professional worrier. Our job is to worry about all of the worst contingencies in life and how they're going to impact your situation financially and what would happen if there were a perfect storm of them. So that we sit down and look at your financial plan and we measure out and say, hey, here's the worst of the worst. If everything happened at once that could possibly happen, this is how your financial picture looks. And you say, you know what, I'm okay with that. Like, I want it to be better. I don't want a perfect storm of the worst contingencies that could happen, but I'm okay with that result. We know that anything better than that, you're going to be very well pleased with those results.
Yeah, fantastic. Great information. Whew. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Sean. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to transition over to Bill. Before I do that, obviously the 3 phases that we kind of wanted to talk through is we wanted to talk about initial investing. Then we wanted to talk about kind of preparation for getting out of the military. And now we want to transition to those that have already been, they're fully retired, and what can we do financially to make sure that they're set up for success. So we're going to move into phase 3, and we're going to have Bill start us off. So I'm going to pull up a slide for you here in a second. But Bill, Social Security is always a big topic of discussion when talking about retirement. When is a good time to take out Social Security?
Well, James, we could talk for like an hour just on Social Security. So let's try to keep this a little brief here. If you look at the slide on the screen, pretty much full retirement age is right around 67-ish now, depending when exactly you were born. And you can take it all the way as early as 62, or you can take it to age 70. Now, if you take it at age 62, you greatly reduce the amount you get per month. If you take it at 70, it goes way up. But obviously, there's a lot of cash you forego in there. So it's going to depend a lot upon, what's the longevity in your family? What is the longevity maybe of your spouses in her family? Because they get certain benefits doing that. So I guess to make a long answer a little shorter is it, once again, the answer nobody wants to hear is it depends. But it really does depend. It depends on your situation and how it fits in your plan. And a good financial planner or a good financial advisor can actually run the numbers and look with you and kind of show where the break even is and what the most positive probability of success is by taking it at different times.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate that. All right, moving in. Next question, Bill. This one actually, again, straight for you, if you don't mind. So I have my TSP and IRAs, and I want to begin withdrawing funds. How much money should I take out so I don't run out of funds?
Once again, depends. The rule of thumb, is pretty much 4 to 5% a year starting out, and that can kind of increase for inflation every year. Now, obviously, if you've got some good years, you can take out more, and that's kind of what I tend to recommend is, let's play on that number, and in good years, you can peel off a little bit, throw in your savings account, throw in your checking account, and take some advantage of it there. But pretty much the rule of thumb, so say you had 100,000 for round numbers, 4 to 5,000 a year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, to you, Sean, big question, right? What is a major risk in retirement that is not discussed enough on the streets?
It's funny because it's actually the opposite of one of the best things we talked about investing earlier. So we talked about dollar cost averaging earlier and how beneficial it is when you're contributing, because every time the market is down, you actually get a discount on that particular security. But if we reverse this and we say, hey, now I'm retired, now I'm drawing out of my portfolio and the market drops, we're now selling those at a discount. And so you can call it reverse dollar cost averaging, you can call it sequence of returns risk. Essentially what happens is you could take two retirees, each with $685,000 at retirement, both with the exact same returns, just one experiencing the low returns in the front and one experiencing the low returns on the back. So just flipping those returns opposite directions, both of them averaging 8%, drawing 5%. They didn't listen to Bill and go with the 4%. They took 5%. And you actually are going to see the one that had the positive returns in the first couple of years of retirement have more money than they started with at year 25. And you're going to see the one that saw just a couple of years of negative returns on the front side actually run out of money at year 13. So one of our biggest risks we're not talking about is reverse dollar cost averaging and the impact of the sequence of returns risk when those negative returns happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to lose money. So absolutely. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. All right, real quick, before I get into the next question that I have teed up, I do want to have a question from the field, and I'll let someone take a stab at it. And this is coming from Chet Miller. He asks, is there a benefit to roll IRA and Roth into an annuity like the Alania's 10-year plan?
I'll take that one. Can you hear me there, guys? Okay. All right, great. I'll take that. It's like we talked about before, rolling IRAs, Roths, or, into different type of things. Annuities, there's extra fees inside of them. Okay. So when you go into annuity, there's typically fees. And by your question, I'm thinking you might be talking about what's called an index annuity by the looks of it here. But there's different things. And for the most part, there's guarantees, and you pay for those guarantees. So it's like anything. We got to look at your situation and should you pay for that guarantee? So I think it's, you can't really answer this question for you, based on this, but I think you have to ask yourself is what am I getting for the lack of what am I paying for?
Every product out there has got its purpose. I think at the end of the day, it's a risk, reward, and intent.
Yeah, I'll add one other thing is we talked about this a little bit earlier, and it parlays to this question very, very well is whomever you're talking to, because this is more of an individual thing to discuss one-on-one with your financial advisor, but you want to make sure they're looking at your overall plan and what the impact is. The thing about annuities is they are typically trading liquidity for safety. So it's reducing access. And so you have to make sure that that fits with the rest of your circumstance. And there's other liquid assets available should you have an emergency or a need arise. It's a great question. It's one that I would encourage you to get individualized financial advice on, and make sure it's part of a comprehensive plan that includes liquidity for emergencies.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. And Sean, we're going to stay with you real quick for the next question. And I actually have a comment that I've been saving for my beautiful wife as I pull this up. So, Sean, tell us what impact do taxes and inflation have on my retirement, as my wife will be wanting to spend it?
I wish I had some sort of good impact to share with you, right? I totally get your wife's comments. I echo them. There is nothing good about inflation and taxes, right? What's interesting is people are attracted by higher rates of return. And like you look in the 80s and what CDs were making at that time, but you've got to quantify in what portion of that was inflation as well. So right now we have record low inflation. It's historically low. We have the government handing out checks to individuals, to businesses, et cetera, amidst the COVID-19 circumstances. And we know that's going to impact taxes down the road. And so I think what you have to acknowledge is inflation, taxes, they're both going to reduce what your portfolio is going to do for you. Again, goes back to that holistic or comprehensive approach of making sure that your advisor is looking at all of that. You look at this graphic and people are always drawn to the 8%, right? In that green column on the bottom, 8% return looks better than any other return there. The difficulty is in that particular circumstance, there's 6% inflation. So by the time that you quantify inflation and then just 25% in taxes, you actually have a 0% return. The most attractive return on here is actually the 2% return, because it's an environment, unrealistic, if you will, but an environment without any inflation. And actually after taxes ends up at the 1.5%. So hopefully that helps, but I don't have any good news whatsoever about taxes and inflation other than you're going to pay them and they're going to continue to go up.
That's okay. I've always been taught from a young age that there's two things that are guaranteed in life, and that's to pay taxes and die. So
that's right.
Hey, can I jump in? Can I jump in here for a second, Dave?
Please.
Yeah, I think Sean made a great point about the taxes. And the other thing, he talked about the financial plan. You need to make sure you have a tax plan in retirement. One of the biggest traps I've seen people do is they're saying, hey, I don't need my IRA, 401k, TSP now. I'm going to wait. And then all of a sudden now, you get to R&D time, required minimum distribution, and you have to take money out of there. And your income actually goes up in retirement instead of down, which we're all programmed to think lower taxes. So your marginal tax rate will go up. So you want to have a plan. It looks like you're tax paying over the entire length of retirement, because you might want to take that earlier before you have to pay at a much lower rate than later on.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, Bill. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll get rid of this slide, and then I'm going to go to Merle Jones here for our last prepared question that I have prepared. And so first off, Merle, tell me, what are some of the other things that we need to pay attention to during our retirement phase of our life?
So, as you know, James, keep it simple, right? So what do people do or fail to do the most? Wills. Who gets what? It's transfer on death. I will tell you, if you look at probate, if you look at where the money goes, if you don't designate where key assets go, if it's got a title, if it's something important. I can't tell you how many clients we bring on and we have X's as beneficiaries. We have different situations. We don't pay attention to details. And that, to Sean's point, is the reason why, a lot of what we do is we're warriors. We go through the details and we make sure that those things are covered. But it amazes me how many people that have young children don't have, a succession. Who takes care of my children if I go? we're going to let the state handle this. Are you kidding me? I mean, there's nothing more important in our family. Nobody pays attention to the details. So I think, you know, the key to success on transitioning, I get asked a lot, do I need a trust? Very few people really genuinely need a trust. There are circumstances, whether you have a special needs child or you've created an estate worth, you know, multi-millions of dollars, absolutely. A will cover most of that. We look at basic financial planning that most people can't do the basics first. And our goal is to make sure that we really cover down on the basics. If you cover the basics, you'll cover most of the details. So I think as an ending comment is, you know, what we try to do is cover the details to make sure that people have a comprehensive plan, that somebody pays attention to changes. Because there's one thing constant, and it's change.
Okay, I second that motion. As you know, as for being so long in the military, I mean, having a will is extremely important. So, okay, well, it has come that time. The questions are drying up on the chat. Been some great interaction with the group. So what I like to do now is I'd like to go ahead and go into some closing comments, and this could be, you know, whatever you'd like to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with Sean, please, if you don't mind, and start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I confessed to you earlier that comprehensive planning is, you know, my passion. One of the things I don't think we had the opportunity to cover that I wanted to make sure and address is what comprehensive planning does is it invites somebody else into your family who knows what your plan is. Inherently, we generally attract opposites. And so there is generally one person that is the driver as far as the finances, and the other person that wants to know there's a plan, but really doesn't want to know the details of the plan. And what having a comprehensive plan and having a financial advisor that you're working alongside does is if the person that's driving the finances right now is to pass prematurely, become incapacitated, etc., that other person has somebody they can trust that they can look at and say, listen, I don't want to change a thing. I just want to know more details about what the plan was that we all signed off on, and I want to continue the course. And so, you know, I again will implore you, comprehensive planning will help you tremendously in many, many different ways. I also want to say, James, thank you for doing this. I think it's an incredible service. I'm honored to even be a small part of it. Just say thank you for having us on.
Well, we thank you, Sean, for your time. We really do. So, all right, great. Thank you very much. Over to you, Bill, please.
Yeah, once again, I want to, just like Sean, thank you, James, for organizing this, putting this together. I think there's some great information here for people in kind of all stages of their life. And the one thing I would say is, there was a lot of information here. It can be kind of confusing and just kind of, be honest with you, scary and just overburdening. Start somewhere. Wherever you're at today, start there and move forward and take one step at a time. If you're not doing anything, not putting money away, you've got credit card, bills if you're young and et cetera, don't think that you need to go to a full comprehensive plan today. Start with, start paying off some credit. Do the things that you can do and don't be intimidated, and, get some help where you need it.
All right, great, Bill. Thank you so much. All right, real quick, not real quick, but Merle, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
What, do I have an hour? No, hey, James, thank you. Honestly, being a retiree and being somebody like you that started early, most of us don't get the opportunity to have a great mentor that really gets us started. I do want to, thank Bill and Sean. I will tell you, they're very smart. They're really good at what they do. At the end of the day, it is about taking care of families. And I think the military pension system is the most misunderstood, valued asset that we own. We designed the app intentionally for that. We really think that, we've accumulated multimillionaires that don't know. And what we think is take time to do the math. We're so good at taking care of everybody else. Pause, take care of your family, understand the value. Congratulations on a group of great warriors that have served our nation, and thank you for what they do every day. And we're here to support, and we appreciate you supporting them by showing them that they need to pause and take time to understand their finances. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Merle. I appreciate that. And yes, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, this whole broadcast was all about informing those that want to be influenced. And so real quick, I throw a comment up here, from our good old friend out at Fort Leavenworth, Sergeant Major Halliburton. Yes, we do have to have a balance both on the profession and personal side. And the finance piece of this whole thing about investing and putting money away is the personal side, but it's going to have implications later. So there's just so much great comments that are coming in now. Good old retired Sergeant Major Brian Lampert out there, thanking us for the information. So at the end of the day, again, my big thanks to you. All three of you took the time out of your day to help me get across a message to my platform that investing, transitioning, or even when you're retired, spending your money wisely and doing those right things to make sure that you're set up for success and that your family is set up for success. So, and you guys did this for no other reason than to just help me educate our soldiers. So, thanks, Bill, Sean, both great to meet you in the last couple of weeks that we've been preparing for this. Obviously, Merle, we've known each other for quite some time, so I thank you for coming on. But really, there's a guy behind the scenes that we owe a big thanks to, who really kind of helped put all this together. Obviously, I'm no master or perfectionist, or I am a perfectionist, but I'm not a master at this whole thing, as I'm still learning it. But to soon-to-be captain, retired, or soon-to-be ex-captain, Joey Reynolds out there has really helped us put this together and kind of sync the three phases that we wanted to get across to our audience. So, sir, I know you're sitting over there behind Merle. Thank you very much. The whole audience owes you a debt of gratitude for all that you did to help us prepare this. So, yeah, come on and screen and give a big wave to everybody. And so thanks to you. If you want to say a few words, go ahead, Joey.
No, I just want to say thank you, Sergeant Major. I think it's a great idea. I love what you and all the other CSMs and, a lot of the other people in the Army, the leaders, taking advantage of the technology that we have, to spread messages to soldiers. And so I just want to thank you.
Yep. And just for the real reason, we all know the real reason why you're in there with Merle is to help him with his technology skills.
That's right. That's right.
I got thumbs up from Sean and Bill. Yep. We all know it. So no, Merle, we love you. You're good. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks again for tuning into episode 3, talking about military and financial planning at all aspects of your career. I hope you were able to take one piece of information from this and use it. If not, all the experts' information has been streaming across the bottom all night long. Get a hold of them. Don't necessarily have to go with them, but you can talk to them and they can help push you in the right direction. But whatever you do, do something. Start getting some money stashed away and do something and have something left for you, your family, and your kids. So without that, I'm going to close it out. I look forward to our next Breck Time broadcast. The schedule has been out. We're going to take a little bit of a turn from the normal aspect of what we're going to do, and we're going to host 3 Sergeant Audie Murphy presidents from across the nation. As you all know, I'm very passionate about the Sergeant Audie Murphy program. I've been a part of it since 2011. 2001, excuse me. And so I just want to bring them on to kind of help us get the program where it needs to be. So tune in a couple of weeks for that one. It'll be a lot of great lessons from our great Sergeant Audie Murphy presidents. And then on 3 June, mark your calendars now for sure, I will have online, Sergeant Major of the Army, retired Dan Daly, will be on this broadcast with me to talk about NCO and soldier programs and AUSA and a bunch of other leadership type stuff. So I'm super excited. I've met him in person a few times, but now I'm going to get a one-on-one conversation with him. So I really look forward to that. So again, gentlemen, thank you very much. And to all the audience in Breck Time Broadcast, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you all in episode 4. Good night. Take care of your families and God bless you.
Good night.